You the one with the snake?
All right. All right. For Judging Judy. All right.
Hello, this is the Judging Judy podcast, the only podcast that I write, create, and produce about America's favorite, least favorite TV judge. Before we jump into the recap for today's episode, which comes from back on October 13th, 1997, I just wanted to say, there are always a few bad apples in every bunch. Except for Red Delicious, that bunch is exclusively bad apples. Now, for a reminder of what was going on in the world back on 10/13/97, I brought in my friend, Professor Wikipedia, Doctorate of Pine Arts. The name D-Generation X was first applied to a stable of WWF wrestlers which would, in time, include Chyna, X-Pac, Mike Tyson, and Hornswoggle. The group's gimmick was as a gang of rebels who broke the rules, acted and spoke as they pleased, and wrestled whomever they wanted, no matter how provocative and insulting. Former CEO of the WWF and morally devoid degenerate herself, Linda McMahon is personally responsible, given her role within the Trump administration, for the dismantling of the Department of Education. The game Age of Empires was first released. Now generally regarded as one of the best video games ever made, Age of Empires requires the player to develop a civilization from a handful of hunter-gatherers to an expansive Iron Age empire. It may be prudent to play Age of Empires again, if only to better prepare for our fast-approaching descent back into a world of warring, loincloth-wearing hunter-gatherer tribes. The 1997 World's Strongest Man competition in Prim, Nevada completed its final day, with Finland's Juuso Ahola taking the crown. He scored 61 points in events as various as the truck pull, log lifts, car rolls, and keg loads. I applaud Juuso Ahola, of course, for winning, but I hope that success hasn't changed him, that he can still find the simple joy that comes with pulling a truck. Thanks for the help, Professor Wikipedia. Now, let's check in on the New York Times crossword for 10/13/97, care of xwords.com. The clue for 53 across is hush, and the answer is bite your tongue. Finally, let's look at the US box office for October 13th, 1997. Number 3 was Air Force One, number 2 was Men in Black, and number 1 was The Peacemaker. A political action thriller starring George Clooney and Nicole Kidman, The Peacemaker is about the illicit sale of post-Soviet Russian nuclear weapons. Clooney opted to make The Peacemaker instead of a Green Hornet movie, and was presumably cast because it was 1997 and he was George Clooney. Meanwhile, Kidman was cast for being smart and precise, which matched her character in the film. Reaction to the movie was mixed, with some criticizing Kidman for slipping back and forth from her native Australian to her put-upon American accent, and others noting the lack of creativity in the way characters on film died. Most noteworthy, however, is that a real billboard promoting The Peacemaker can be seen in the 1998 comedy film A Night at the Roxbury.
What is love?
Baby, don't hurt me.
His dad fell into deep depression when his parents' 43-year-old marriage came apart.
What a shame too. He just missed out on the traditional 44th year anniversary gift, marriage counseling.
So he removed the hunting guns from the house.
But why? Everyone knows that guns don't kill people. Divorce kills people. By pulling the trigger of a gun.
Do you think your son loves you?
Follow up, do you think your son is in love with you? Maybe we'll get an answer to that question in the courtroom.
All parties on Dersawa versus Dersawa. Step forward, please.
Max Sr., a retired machinist, is suing his oddly similarly named son, Max Jr., for removing guns from his house. Is the whole Max Sr. and Max Jr. thing, is that confusing? I could call one Max Max and the other one Min Max, or I could call one Pepsi Max and the other one Pepsi Max Jr., or maybe HBO Max and HBO Go. I'll keep thinking about it. Max Sr. is suing for the attorney fees he requires to get the guns back, because apparently there are other courtrooms, besides this one with a live studio audience and cameras and lights and a judge who seems to get younger each year. Anyway, in these other courtrooms, you can hire a professional to argue your case for you. We call these professionals lawyers, or more technically, lawyers. Max Jr. brought his mom as a witness. Judy asks if she is Mrs. Dershua, which she confirms, suggesting perhaps that she and Max Sr. have not formally divorced. Or perhaps she remarried someone with the same last name in order to avoid the whole headache of getting all new Peanuts-themed addressed envelope labels.
Good grief.
I already clipped this one from the teaser, but I have to include it again because Judy really comes in hot.
Mr. Dersowa, do you think your son loves you?
I don't know.
Judy doesn't press Max Sr. any further on his ability to read his son's mind. Instead, she references the paperwork submitted for this case. In it, Max Jr. says he removed the guns because he was concerned for the safety of his father and his mother.
Do you think he had reason to be concerned?
Yes, I certainly do.
Turning to Max Jr., Judy asks why he had reason to be concerned for their safety. He says there had been very violent fights between the two of them, some of them resulting in calls to 911. Max Jr. also says that both of his parents had survived strokes, 2 for his dad and 1 for his mom, although it's not a competition, even though his dad is winning.
During that time, there were three suicide attempts by my father.
Is this the fastest we can be confident the plaintiff isn't going to win the case? That isn't to say there isn't value in the rest of the case. There is still probably an interesting story to be heard. But it's decided, right? He admits his son has had reason for concern, and then his son provides all the reasons. Not only do I not see what kind of case he can make that someone should pay for the attorney he hired to get the guns back, I don't think he should have gotten the guns back. And I don't think Judy will either.
She's always giving me a hard time, real unpredictable.
Max Jr. says that he only learned about the nature of the suicide attempts by the 3rd attempt, and that it was then that he took the guns from the house.
After I removed the guns, a 4th attempt was made, where he attempted also to take my mom with him.
Nominally, this is a comedy podcast, but I think it's going to be a struggle to inject much levity into this one. If you never found this podcast funny, but you've stuck with it for 20 episodes, none of this should feel or sound any different to you. Still unfunny. If this is your first episode and you were looking for humor, I'm sorry, the other 19 are nominally much funnier.
It's not reassuring, but it is honest.
Perhaps a little indelicately, Judy asks how Max Sr. attempted to take his wife with him, resulting in Max Jr. describing how, on his birthday, his mom was making a 911 call after discovering Max Sr. with a self-inflicted stab wound in his arm. However, before she could make the call, Max Sr. grabbed his wife, threw her to the ground, throttled her throat, and, quote, said he would take her with him. I'm not sure how I feel about Miss Dershua being here. I suppose it's good she can serve as a witness for her son against her husband, but look, I don't think we needed her to show up in fake court with the guy who tried to kill her. There has to be some kind of get out of going to Judge Judy free card, right?
Yes, definitely.
And your parents are separated
Yes.
since?
Thank heavens. Max Sr., according to his son, started asking for his weapons back at the beginning of his separation from his wife, which I think was still a good time for him to not have guns.
And he said that he needed them for the money.
Perhaps sensing his father's bluff, Max Jr. says he offered to buy the guns off his dad if he really needed the money. Max Sr., however, said he wasn't interested in his son having the guns and would do whatever he could to get them from his son. Normally, I'd applaud a father for not wanting his son to have guns, but something about this specific case feels different. Max Sr. confirms for Judy that everything his son has said so far is accurate.
Don't you think he did the smart thing by removing the guns?
Yes, I certainly do.
Not only does Max Sr. think his son did the right thing, he even says he thanked him for his actions. And what better way to show your appreciation than by suing him in real court and going on Judge Judy to boot? However, Max Sr. still wanted the guns back, asserting that they were no one else's but his.
I get it, but it doesn't matter how determined you are.
I originally wanted them back to hang on the wall as mementos of my childhood.
I don't know, but that sounds like a perfect cautionary tale about why children shouldn't even have guns. They could grow up to become Max Seniors. Max Senior, however, said he had second thoughts.
And I thought, jeepers, I'm in fairly good health. I'm in good frame of mind. And there's no reason why I should not have the guns.
I can think of a couple. And based on his son's face, as soon as Max Sr. says the word jeepers, I think Max Jr. can also think of a few reasons. Unless your name is Daphne, and you find the presence of a talking Great Dane unremarkable, no good can come from saying the word jeepers.
They are my personal property, and when I thanked you for them, that didn't mean that you could keep them for the rest of your life.
I think he actually intended to keep them for the rest of your life, Max Sr., but I understand the confusion, given your eerily similar names. Max Jr. continues to look ill, as his father describes the lengths he would go to get his property back. The property, I remind you, that he may very well have tried to use to kill himself or his wife.
Oh, historical context is important.
I am going to take you to court. If it costs me a lot of money in attorney's fees, I am going to expect you to reimburse me the attorney fees that it costs me to get the guns back.
Max Sr. ends his side of the story by saying that it doesn't seem like his son listened to him, and then says that if this behavior keeps up, he can think again about taking the car Friday night to visit his girlfriend one town over. Whoop, nope, sorry, I got my notes mixed up. Let's see, the Judge Judy podcast notes in this pile. New Brady Bunch California Raisins crossover spec script notes in this pile over here. By the way, it's titled California Brady Bunch of Raisins. It stars Tom Brady as Alice.
Now look what you've done.
He seems like a pretty responsible young man that you raised.
I don't disagree with Judy, except the young man part. Max Jr. isn't old. He's certainly younger by a few years at least than his father, but he's gone from graying to gray, and he's definitely closer to the senior citizens discount than he is to the kids menu. All the same, I'm with Judy. She asks Max Sr. if he's ever had any problems with his son, if, I don't know, perhaps he had ever acted out by hanging out with those sour grape no good nicks, even though he'd been expressly forbidden. Wait, nope. I mixed up my piles again there. Max Sr. confirms he has had problems many times, forcing Judy to concede that she was specifically speaking of problems with his son as an adult. We learn that Max Jr. is 42 years old, or, in his words, old enough to decide if he is going to follow in his father's footsteps and become a singing raisin, or if he wants to be a football-playing maid like Alice, who you'll remember is played by Tom. I really got to do something about these notes. Sorry. Anyway, we get a little bit more background on Max Jr. He's married with no kids. When he's not taking his dad's property, he's a photographer and hairstylist. He also confirms for Judy that he's still close with his mom, who takes the initiative to ask if she can speak.
It seems to me when my husband is angry at me, he tries to take it out on him because he knows how close we are.
Helpful background, because here I was worried Max Sr. was a stable, well-functioning adult. Martha Ann, the wife and mother who finally has a name, points out that her other son is also in the crowd. He looks a little like John Lovitz, and I'm a little worried that Martha Ann is going to say that no one really cares much about Tim or his feelings. I mean, he's John Lovitz and his brother's kind of a Paul Reiser. Even though the Dershowas only have 2 kids, Tim is definitely giving me third child vibes.
The guns are at a friend of the family's house.
Ah, okay. That's immensely helpful because it was unclear, at least to me, if a lawsuit had already occurred, if Max Sr. had already gotten the guns back through the courts, and now he wanted to be paid back. But no, kind of a reset. A judge hasn't decided to give the guy his guns back. The guns are at a family friend's house, probably having pizza rolls. They're probably being told that they'll go home soon. Don't worry about it. Just keep watching the Animaniacs. Anyway, if Max Sr. didn't spend the money yet on lawyer's fees, how can he sue for them? Is he speculating about how much he's going to have to spend on lawyer's fees for a case that he hasn't filed yet? That's a little confusing to me. Judy says that in the complaint, he put a value of $500 on the guns, though clearly they are priceless to him.
None of us live forever, Mr. Dershowitz.
Read the room.
I think the guy who's tried to kill himself 4 times is acutely aware of the fact, Judy. The judge, though, she goes on to ask Max Sr. what he thought would happen to the guns once he passed.
I really couldn't care less.
Well, that's a good attitude.
I think the guy still wants to die. Despite his claims of being stable, I think the guy just wants to die. Max Sr. goes on to say that he hopes the guns, are safe after he dies, and that whoever gets them after he's gone keeps them in good condition. So he could care a little bit more than less, but not all that much. We learned that for much of the previous year, Max Sr. had a restraining order against him with regards to Martha Ann, which Martha Ann provides to Judy for her perusal. While Martha Ann digs out the paperwork, Max Sr. explains that if he's alive, he will still be married by the time their next anniversary rolls around, that divorce proceedings haven't been filed, though they both agreed upon a separation. It seems like this agreement was done under some degree of duress, given Max Sr.'s repeated suicide and attempted homicide attempt, so kudos for coming to terms on that one.
However, we agreed to a separation a long time ago, and she decided, for some reason or another, that she would make it legal.
Again, I can think of a few reasons. Max Sr. said he hired an attorney after she hired an attorney and told him that she would take everything of his that she could get. Whew. Now look, I can imagine sitting in the pediatrician's office back in 1997. I'm sitting there trying to do a word search in a dog-eared highlights magazine. I'm just waiting for my appointment so that my doctor can tell me again that I'm, quote, a little husky for my age, when I look up at the TV and I see Max Sr.'s absent face staring back at me, and I realize that, no, I really don't want to grow up. Judy, perhaps veering towards a decision, tries to sum up Max Sr.'s case.
I'm a grown-up. I'm an adult. I have all my faculties about me. And I don't want my children to start to make decisions for me about what's good and what's bad.
That may be how Max Sr. feels. I think Judy's got that right. But we're all also on the same page that this guy isn't okay, right? We can agree, I hope, that this man should not have guns and should not get money to sue his son to get those guns back.
You tell me I'm not right.
I am really most sympathetic with your son.
Oh, thank God. Judy's rationale is fine. It's that if Max Jr. gave the guns back and then Max Sr. used the guns to harm himself or to harm Martha Ann, that would destroy Max Jr.'s life. Perfect. I'm agreed. We're all agreed. I think that's true. But I don't think we even need this what if. I don't think we need the hypothetical. We've got a guy who doesn't need guns and a guy who shouldn't have them. If he needs some kind of mementos from his childhood, I'm sure we can ask to borrow an abacus from a natural history museum, or we can find a Model T or something.
I mean, if you came here, Mr. Dershowitz, and said to me, I've never done anything to suggest to my son that I would harm myself or harm his mother, and he really has no basis to be concerned about these guns that are mine, I would feel very differently.
I hear you, Judy. But even in that instance, I'm still saying the guy doesn't need guns to remind him of when he was a kid. Get him a piece of coal. Get him polio. There are lots of things that aren't guns that serve as perfectly good reminders of days bygone. Judy has a little bit of a twist, something I certainly wasn't expecting, and something I'm at a loss to explain.
I am going to give you a judgment for the money. And I am going to direct you, sir, to ensure that these guns, which are mementos of your father's history, you know, he's had them in his family for years. I don't know whether your brother has sons who might be interested in having these hunting rifles at some point in their lives.
She goes on like this for a while, so I'll just sum it up. She's giving Max Sr. the money and telling Max Jr. to keep the guns safe, to keep the guns in the family. What? The guy only wants the money so he can sue his son to get the guns. He doesn't, and it's money he doesn't deserve. He doesn't deserve the guns, he doesn't deserve the money. And if he gets money from Judy, what's he gonna do with it but buy more guns? Like I said, I'm at a loss with this one. I feel like there is a logic underlying the decision, but I'm having trouble decoding it.
Very unusual.
In lieu of closing words, we get a closing hug between the two Maxes, which is a great thing. It looks very heartfelt and very genuine, and I'm happy. I hope it lasts. I'm happy for both of them. But I'm still monumentally confused about the decision and where this actually leaves them. Next up, we've got a case of crying over spilled bleach. Walter and his son Brian are the plaintiffs. They allege that Joseph Jr., who's the son of the defendant Joseph Sr., spilled bleach on their carpet and damaged it, whereas
Joe Jr. says Brian threatened him with a snake.
Hey you, get away from my carpet with that bleach. Yeah? Or else I'll... Look, a snake. Oh, shucks, that ain't no snake. That's just you pointing your finger at me, pointing and hissing like I don't even know the difference between a snake and a finger. Now I'm definitely gonna pour this bleach in your carpet, and I ain't gonna feel bad about it neither.
You the one with the snake?
Yes.
Wise move, Judy. You definitely want to establish right away who in the courtroom does or does not have a snake. It's something I ask any time I enter any room, to be honest. I've been fooled too many times by a surprise snake. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, hiss, hiss, hiss. Brian confirms he is the snake wrangler, and Judy commands him to stand next to his father.
You the one with the bleach?
Yeah.
Joe Jr. is similarly made to stand next to his father, and I suspect we might have a good old-fashioned snake and bleach fight. Oh, they didn't actually bring them to court. No, yeah, that makes sense, even if it's a little disappointing. With that said, there is an awfully big paper bag on the table in front of Joe and Joe Jr. I don't see a terrarium in front of Walter and Brian, so I won't get my hopes up.
Tell me what you did to this young man with your snake.
If you ever find yourself being asked, what did you do to this young man with your snake? You've made mistakes in your life, potentially ones that you can't take back. There's no good answer to the question, tell me what you did to this young man with your snake. 15-year-old Brian looks incredibly like 45-year-old Macaulay Culkin, though his explanation of what he did to Joe Jr. with his snake kind of lacks the ingenuity we came to expect from Culkin's Kevin McAllister in Home Alone. I mean, instead of setting up a series of elaborate traps, which would eventually result in Joe Jr. getting electrocuted, getting both of his big toes submerged in boiling hot acid, and as his coup de grace, having his snake pretend to be a necktie, only to choke Joe Jr. until his face turns blue, Brian says he simply held the snake out and pretended as if he was going to put it on Joe Jr. He's no Kevin McAllister.
I hope I never see any jerks again.
Noted herpetologist Judy Scheinlin asks what kind of snake it is.
A red-tailed boa, just a little snake about this big.
Oh, you said this big, and then you said this big. Is it growing?
This big.
Yes, but it's very sensitive about its size. Eventually, we land on a length about the width of Brian's shoulders, or if the snake were a party sub, probably enough to feed 2 or 3 people who like to eat a snake stuffed inside sandwich bread. When asked why he would pretend to put his snake on Joe Jr., Brian says he was just messing around.
And then he threw a icy or a Slurpee or something. I don't know what you call it.
Who throws it?
Slurpee.
Oh, I hope Judy asks what flavor. We zoom out and there are actually 2 paper bags in front of Brian and Walter, so we've got a classic 3-bagger right now. Upon being slurped, Brian says he went back to his house, put the snake away, and got a cup of water. However, it wasn't to slake his thirst. Unless we're talking about a thirst for violence.
And went back outside to throw it on him.
However, Brian says when he went out with his cup of water, he says that Joe Jr. had a cup of his own, purportedly filled with bleach, which he said he would throw at Brian if Brian threw the water at him. What kind of person has bleach at the ready and so soon after drinking a still unknown flavor of Slurpee? Now that I think about it, we also don't know what flavor bleach it was. Anyway, Joe Jr.'s grinning in a way that suggests he may have a different version of events. But first we get to hear Brian detail how he pushed away the cup of bleach before throwing his cup of water at Joe Jr. and retreating home.
And then he came out of his house afterwards with a whole gallon of bleach.
This all has Wile E. Coyote versus Roadrunner or Bugs Bunny versus Daffy Duck vibes. Though I'm not sure if it's rabbit season or bleach season, and I can't remember if the Acme company made red boa constrictors.
When I got into my house, I shut my door and he started to pour it on my back.
It was at this point, newly bleached, that Brian says the bleach also got onto the carpet. With Brian's mom coming down the stairs, Brian says Joe Jr. returned to his own house.
Mission accomplished.
Turning towards the Joes, Judy yells for Joe Jr. to share his side of the story. If the in media res way that Brian presented the story bother you, Joe Jr. is here to provide some helpful background. They didn't just spontaneously generate with Slurpees and snakes in hand. These 2, plus a few others, had planned to go to a bowling alley, the kind of place that I've also felt could use more bleach throwing.
But instead, the dude that was supposed to be driving us said that he didn't want to go.
Seems like it's that guy who deserved to get some bleach thrown at his back, but who am I to say? With their bowling plans in the gutter, they decided to stand around and talk. Inexplicably, Joe Jr. says Brian had his snake with him, though snakes are notoriously bad bowlers given their bad depth perception. Joe Jr. doesn't profess to know what kind of snake it was, but does say that it was big. He moms the size even a little bigger than Brian did, suggesting that if the snake were a hot dog, it would be enough to feed 5 or 6 people, if they like to eat snake wedged inside a hot dog bun.
The snake is hissing and snapping and jumping up. They thought it was funny.
And I think it's animal abuse. Joe Jr. said that he told Brian to get the snake away from him.
I guess he didn't want to listen.
While snakes, of course, lack conventional ears, it looks like Brian does have them, so he ought to have been able to hear Joe Jr. when he said this. Joe Jr. says he went into the house and retrieved a cup of soda. Unclear if we're talking about a cola or an orange soda, a grapefruit, a cinnamon kind of Dr. Pepper thing, a lemon-based soda, or what. After a confrontation, Brian knocked the cup out of Joe Jr.'s hand and threw something at him.
My jeans and my shirt were starting to fade, so I assumed it was bleach because it was a yellowish color when he threw it out at me.
Joe Jr. says it was at this point he went back to get bleach of his own and ran after Brian as he fled home. Which means it's time to cue the off-brand Benny Hill music.
We ran in this house. We ran in a complete circle around the kitchen and all the way to the thing. He turned around and he tackled.
Again, the guy who was supposed to drive them to the bowling alley, he could have spared us all of this. What a turkey. Joe Jr. says that while they were wrestling on the ground, the bleach went everywhere, as if it were taking full advantage of its ritual rumspringa. Joe Jr. concludes his story by saying yes, it was at this point that Brian's mom entered the scene, but that he never went into the house and wantonly threw bleach around the place. Though it seems like he probably would have. He went in with the intent to bleach, right? He had to have opened if it were really spewing all over the place. It doesn't sound like it was meant as an idle threat. Coming back from a commercial break, Judy turns to Walter to ask an important question, though sadly not one related to the flavors of Slurpees or sodas.
Why does your son have a boa?
I hate to quote myself, but I think it's animal abuse. Walter says that Brian just likes snakes and that he keeps it in an aquarium in the garage.
He didn't keep it in the aquarium.
Not only did he not keep it in the aquarium, he was going to try to teach it how to take down a 7-10 split. Walter has to concede that he wasn't home at the time of the incident, and so he can't truly know what happened. In fact, he's relying on his other son, who's also in the courtroom. Young Sean is maybe 11 years old, and he looks like Macaulay Culkin and Richie Rich. Sean is wearing a shirt with the words Gecko Hawaii written on it, which, while not snake related, kind of still feels like some kind of direct jab at Joe Jr. Walter alleges that Sean saw the whole thing and that Joe Jr.'s version of events isn't what happened at all. Judy, however, doesn't want to get Sean involved and tells the younger kid to stay seated.
Your son was acting like an idiot. Your son was acting like a fool.
I agree.
The camera stays on Walter throughout this whole exchange here, so it's possible that Judy's pause was so that she could find more synonyms for fool and idiot.
Moron! Scab eater!
Despite agreeing that his own son is, let me see here, a buffoon, Walter still feels Joe Sr. should have to pay for the damage done to the carpet.
And he broke into our home, and we had nothing to do with it.
That is a very liberal interpretation of the word broke, and the word nothing, and the word it. Judy doesn't buy the story, but still shouts down Joe Jr.'s mocking rebuttal. When Walter insists that Joe Jr. came through his front door, uninvited, and poured bleach on his son in their home, Judy asks very simply who started the whole thing. Obviously, it was the kid who was supposed to drive them to the bowling alley.
Your son told me the story, Mr. Smith.
Judy says that she assumes he thought his son was responsible enough to have a snake.
Not a little teeny garter snake, but a boa. That's about so big.
Judy's miming its size now, and it's gotten even bigger. If this snake were a fruit by the foot, it would be big enough to feed a whole bunch of people who like to eat fruit by the foots. Fruits by the feet? As a brief aside, Judy asks Bailiff Bird if he's a snake lover, and foolishly he says no. With Brian sitting right there in front of him. Look, Bird, I'm gonna tell you, just get your bleach ready, because this kid's gonna come after you with a snake. Judy's whole point is that putting a boa around someone's shoulder isn't nice if they don't like snakes.
Yes. I guess that's true.
Joe Sr. chimes in to say that he would have preferred to resolve the whole matter with Walter himself, as neighbors. However, when he got home that night, it turned out that the police had already been called.
Why did you call the police? Who called the police?
Walter says that he's the one that called the police, and it was because someone came into his house, quote, unannounced, uninvited, and invaded his home. Which suggests that if Joe Jr. had been invited to come in, or if he had announced himself as he came in, it would have been A-OK. Always announce yourself as you're coming in to bleach someone's carpet.
That's how you do it.
Judy's still incredulous. The two kids were goofing around. Things got out of hand. Why call the police?
I just told you that, Your Honor. I told you why.
This seems like a foolish time to give the judge attitude, Walter, but I suppose it's still a better strategy than your son throwing a snake at her. Judy returns to the fact that the whole thing started because of something dumb his kid did. That it wasn't a burglary. That the kids were neighbors and something like friends.
It's an invasion of my privacy. That's my home.
Walter's sounding more and more like the kind of guy who feels justified for shooting someone who turns into his driveway while making a U-turn. Let me put it another way. He's turning into the kind of guy who deserves to have his carpet and son bleached. Joe Sr. again tries to say that he wishes they could have resolved the matter as neighbors, but that Walter tried to press charges for vandalism and for assault. Judy, however, has moved on to the carpet cleaning bill. It totals just a cup of bleach or two over $1,700.
Plus $120 for my son's clothes that were completely destroyed by the bleach.
I don't care about your son's clothes.
Judy winds things up by saying that the whole thing was started by Brian and ended by Joe Jr., so each of them have to pay half.
Mr. Smith, if you want to be fully compensated, then get your son to get a job and give you $860.
Judy concludes things by asking both Brian and Joe Jr. if they feel responsible for what happened. They both nod dispiritedly.
Good. Only problem is your father. He doesn't see it yet.
We've made it to the part of the show that matters much more than all of the other parts of the show. We've come to my turn to judge Judge Judy. I follow a make-believe set of rules and rubrics that really comes down to this. Did Judy do her job? Did she deliver justice in her rulings, in her behavior, and in her attitude? If she did, she's innocent. If not, she's guilty. I had to return to case number 1 to make my ruling today because it was the heavier and probably the more important of the two cases. And the ruling, it originally confused me. It confused me a lot. I was confounded. Why give Max Sr. anything? Why reward him with any money? He just wants to sue his son so he can get his guns back and kill himself and kill others. But then I returned to Judy's specific ruling and her wording. She said he was getting the amount listed in his complaint, which I assume is the $500 he values the guns at. Now that's not enough money to hire a lawyer. That's barely enough to get into a lawyer's office, but it lets him save face. It lets him feel like he's an adult who's entitled to things, who can't have his property taken away without recourse. It's symbolic, and for men of a certain age, symbolism is important. Do I think he deserved to save face? Nope. He tried to kill his wife. It sounds like he has a history of abuse. I've made it clear, I don't think he deserves anything. But whereas I couldn't see Judy's logic before, at least I can follow it now for case number 1. Now for case number 2, I think she should have just ruled completely against Walter and his dumb kid, because his dumb kid was using his snake like a toy. However, my judgments aren't made based solely on Judy's rulings. So I'm going to take into account the fact that she wanted to have the appearance she was punishing Joe Jr. for his actions as well. And all in all, she didn't carry on. She didn't try to steal the show. And to be honest, when it comes to Judy, getting over that incredibly low bar always feels like something of a victory. So for all those reasons, today, Judy is innocent. With that noise, it's time for Hangman. But this isn't the Hangman you played when you were a kid, when you really ought to have been learning double entry bookkeeping. This is Hangman with stakes. Today, I'm putting parachutes up on the gallows. Now, I've never had to use one, but I'd like to think that if the occasion arose, that they would be there for me. And if I win, they will remain in existence. However, if I lose, they're gone immediately. They'll vanish, poof. I know that, amongst other things, the skydiving industry will take a big hit with the disappearance of parachutes. But hey, I said this is Hangman Mistakes, didn't I? Now, as always, I'm using hangmanwords.com, and this week I'm returning to their TV words list. Last week they got me with Dana Scully because I was not expecting a character name. If it were called Dana Scully's X-Files, fine. But come on. Anyway, as a reminder, I can make 6 incorrect guesses, 6 letters that aren't in the word until I lose. And yeah, I know this would be better on a visual medium. So today it looks like we have, again, 2 words. The first one is 5 letters. The second one is 9 letters to 7 letters. So let's start off with an easy one because I need a win after last week's Dana Scully debacle. Let's start off with an S. There is an S. It's at the end of the first word. So a bunch of blanks, a space, a bunch more blanks, and then an S. Let's go with I, as in ocular. There is no I. So now I have a head and I have 5 more incorrect guesses. Let's go with N, as in the letter after M. There are 2 N's, so blank, 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 N, blank, space, blank, 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 N, blank, 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 S. So we have a plural here. Is it young at the beginning? Let's try O. There is an O, but it wasn't at the beginning. Blank, 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 N, blank, space, blank, 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 N, O, blank, blank, S. What about D? As in, darn, I hope there's a D in this word. There is a D. Blank, 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 N, blank, space, blank, 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 N-O, space, no, damn it, blank, D-S. Let's try R. The oft-quoted phrase pirates deliver. There are 2 R's, blank R, blank N, blank, space, R, blank, blank, N-O, blank, D-S. Let's try C, as in, we'll see if there's a C in this. There's no C. So I have 4 more incorrect guesses. Let's go with A. There is an A. So blank F, sorry, blank R-A-N blank, space R, blank blank N-O, blank D-S. So I think the first word is Frank. That's why I was saying F. Okay, the F will also go K. Frank, and then is it I guess Frank Reynolds? Yeah, it was Frank Reynolds. I don't know who that is. Presumably it's an actor, but also be a character. Could be a show. But anyway, parachutes, they get to stick around. They get to hang around. You're welcome. Next time there's a plane crash, you can thank me after you exit safely through the exit doors or to the back, to the front, whatever. Listen to your flight attendant. But anyway, parachutes, they're a good thing. You're welcome. With our last few moments together, I wanted to share an out-of-context quote from Judge Judy. They didn't know if they were going to the jail or to the beach, you know? It could have been either one. That's it. Subscribe, fornicate, like, and share. But whatever you do, don't skip out on driving your friends to the bowling alley.